Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going through some of the other Seymour, or Wallace-Seymour I should say, artist watercolours, and these are the artist watercolour line. I previously looked at the early watercolours and I've still got the Humours, the 4 Humours set of 18th century watercolours to come. These are the artist ones that I'm doing now, and they come as a full pan. So you can't buy them in half pans, you can't buy them in tubes, they only come as a full pan. And you can only buy them from Turner's of Manchester in the UK, that is the only place you can get them. They are quite a generous full pan, they are overfilled, and you can see they're kind of slightly sticky. I will warn you, I've had some out on my table and I was away for 24 hours. When I came back, this cad yellow has got little spots all over it of fly shit, fruit flies. Fruit flies were all over it when I got back because they've got honey in them, and unfortunately honey attracts ants, fruit flies and so on. So if you've got them, put a lid on them, make sure they're sealed well. Same with all honey containing paints really. No issues with mould yet. I know some people get mould issues with honey containing paints, but nothing yet. Now these are a very, very, very fine watercolour. The pigments are ground very fine. They are handmade up in Yorkshire in the UK, and by the artist himself, by Pip Seymour and his team. And when they are made, they are a mixture, the base I should say, is a mixture of honey and gum Senegal, which is sometimes termed Kordofan gum Arabic, but it's from a different tree. It's really properly called gum Senegal, I suppose. And that's what they use as the base, which is very different from our usual watercolours that most people use. I think in composition of base, they're most similar to Schminke, Schminke Horadam, the artist line from Schminke, in terms of what the base is comprised of. And these lift really, really easily. I found I couldn't wait really, and I decided I would have a look at some of them before I shot this video. So I took my squirrel mop, dampened it, and I did my standard across and back, and I got this much. Turn it over so you can see it. A huge amount of cad yellow came off on the brush really easily. It's very transparent. I mean, I can see that it has covered up the black. I can see that there's a yellow layer over it, but they're very, 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 very transparent. Cad red is extremely transparent but got beautiful granulation, and the ultramarine blue deep, I mean, it's a fantastic colour, but it's a very, very, I mean, it's semi-opaque I suppose. It has got a great transparency to it, but lovely granulation again. So those were the 3 that I opened to have a look, and I wanted to just have a look at those, and then I was going to do the review immediately. That was my plan, was to just sort of do the primaries and then start the review. And obviously this is part 1 of my usual 2-part review setup that I now do. And I opened the next colour, which was ultramarine pink, in my swatch chart, and there was a problem with it. The packaging had actually reacted with the paint and gone, I'll show it to you, it's really horrible, look at that. That's not ultramarine pink, that's just horrendous. I mean, it just looks awful. That is corroded aluminium that's reacted with the paint. So I got in touch with Turner's and I said, look, this has happened, what should I do? And they replied and said, well, we've got in touch with the artist, and yeah, very early on when they made their first batch of these, a few colours reacted with the packaging, so they changed the way they're wrapping them. We'll get a new one out to you immediately, don't worry. And they were fantastic, really quick. Really, you know, sometimes when you go to a company and say something like that, they'll accuse you of storing it incorrectly or all sorts of problems. They freely admitted it was their problem straight away and just got a new one sent to me, which arrived the next day, which I think is great customer service. So I'm really impressed with Turner's for that reason. And I should state, I've got no affiliation with Turner's or Pip Seymour, so if you buy these products, I get nothing, just to put that out there. They're not available from Amazon or any company I have an affiliate scheme with, so just bear that in mind. I'm not plugging these because I stand to make anything from it, quite the opposite. So I haven't unwrapped this or the others, but I'm going to do that now and see if it's any different. It'd be really annoying if it's also corroded. I bought this palette, I actually bought several of them, and it's got a thumb loop on it, it's really good. from, I think they're called Mihan or Minan, on which are a vendor on Amazon, and they're a 48 half pan palette, which is great with a lift out tray, usual sort of setup, very similar to like the standard kinds of metal enamel palettes that you see. And these are really cheap, really economical. You can get them with or without a bag of half pans of the appropriate number. So I bought a stack of these because I thought they'd be really good to put a lot of my different paints in, and I've linked these in the video description and the accompanying blog post if you want to get yourself some. You can get them from the US and the UK Amazon sites. Don't know about Canada, I haven't looked yet, but they're very economical. So I thought I would put, as I unwrap them, I'll put them in here, and then that'll keep the pesky fruit flies away, and it'll make it a little bit easier for me to deal with them. Now, they are a full pan, which is annoying if you use palettes, because full pans obviously take up loads of space. But when you look at the cost of these from Turner's, you know, none of these paints are really much more than a few pounds. You know, they're under 10, most colours are under £10. So they're no more expensive for a full pan than a tube or a half pan of Winsor & Newton Professional or Daniel Smith or even Schminker would be, but you're getting loads more paint. And that's really impressed me a lot about them, is that actually they're actually pretty good value. And I can't find an awful lot of reviews of them online, because I think you can only get them from one place. And they have got distributors in other countries, which again I will sort of link to and everything. And they do make oils, and they make gouache, or all sorts of different things that they manufacture. But because they're so sort of limited, there's not many reviews around of them. So I'm opening now the Ultramarine Pink. And I'm just going to hope that this hasn't degraded in the same way as the last one. This one is fine. So what they did when they changed the packaging is they started putting a piece of glassine paper over the paint to protect it from the foil, which I thought was a really wonderfully smart move. So just going to pop that in. And I'm doing my usual keeping the labels, and I'm sticking them onto my swatch chart so that I have them. So you'll have to bear with me whilst I go through them, and I'll talk about the pigments as I open them all. So the ones that I've already opened, the Cad Yellow is pure single pigment, Pigment Yellow 35, Cadmium Yellow. Oh, before I mention anything about pigments, I should say they don't have the pigments on the labels or the website. I'm told this is to keep down the labelling costs, because they don't have to do sort of registration with the colour index and things. But if you contact Turner's, they will provide you with the pigment information if you ask for it. So just to put that out there. So Pigment Yellow 35 pure, cadmium zinc sulfide, cadmium yellow. The cadmium red mid, so that's Cad Yellow middle. Cad red middle is pure Pigment Red 108, cadmium red, which is cadmium sulfoselenide. Ultramarine blue deep is pure PB29 ultramarine. Ultramarine pink is pure Pigment Red 259 ultramarine pink. Next colour I chose was Ultramarine Red, which is pure Pigment Violet 15 ultramarine violet. And that's a colour that's, you know, yeah, that one's got glassine over it as well. And it's quite interesting, on some of them the honey's kind of crystallised very slightly. So you can see it's a little bit sparkly. So I know I'm slightly off camera, and I know some of you get annoyed when I'm slightly off camera. But the reality of what I'm doing is I am sticking a piece of paper cut from the label onto a swatch chart. It's not very exciting, so I don't think you're really losing out. I will be back in a second on camera when I paint them, so you'll be able to see what they look like then. But for now, I just wanted to kind of talk you through them. So they are all very different in consistency, which is kind of reassuring, because they are a handmade paint, and they should be very different because they are different bases or different base compositions for different colours, that kind of idea. And when they make these, what they do is they mill them to make their colours. They mill down the minerals or whatever to make their pigments. They mix them into the base, they pour them into trays and dry them until they go sort of leathery, and then they die cut them to make the pieces that go into the half pans, which is why they're all slightly different heights. They really feel very handmade, and I like that. I'm really reassured by that. So the next one is now Bohemian Green Earth, which is pure PG23 Green Earth, which many of you will know as Terra Verte. And oh, this one's a bit loose in the half pan, so let's see how deep it really is. Oh, that's a bit cheeky. Okay, right, I'm going to flag this. When you see these in the half pan, they look really reassuringly fat, and you think you're getting loads and loads of paint for your money. But when you take them out, or at least this one, look, it's got a bloody great big hole in the middle because it's been kind of folded to fit in the half pan. So don't be fooled by how sticky up they are. They are slightly folded, which makes them look a little bit more generous than they really are. I'm not going to hold that against them. That's just a foible of the way they're made. They're handmade. They are all going to be different. But don't get overexcited by these hugely overstacked half pans, because they are really quite clearly a bit folded. But that's their handmade nature. And just like when you buy handmade food, you don't get arsey because the one you got was very slightly smaller than the next person. You accept it because it's handmade, and that's what handmade kind of is. So just trying to get this one into the palette, which is an interesting struggle. I think these full pans are a little bit oversized, so they're not going to perfectly fit. So I am reassured by the manufacturers that this Bohemian Green Earth is actually collected from Bohemia, wherever that is nowadays. Czech Republic, Slovakia, somewhere like that. I can't actually remember where it is these days. But they do go out and collect these things, and they mill them all themselves. The next one is Verona Green Earth, which is actually a phthalo green blue shade mixed with brown iron oxide, so it's not a natural pigment per se. It's a mixture of phthalo green and burnt sienna to all intents and purposes. And I'm going to have to start a new row because I'm using full pans, so their fitting is not quite so easy in the palette. Okay. Next one is Permanent Green Very Light, which I just thought looked cute in the colour swatches on their website, so I chose it. It's a mixture again. It's PY3, Hansa Yellow 10G, and PG7, which is phthalo green blue shade. And this one has got some beautiful crystals of sugary stuff crystallising out of the honey on the surface of that. Look at that, isn't it cool? But that is just the handmade nature of this type of paint, and it's a really cool colour, but it's a convenience mix. It's in any other brand, it's going to be something like a transparent yellow or something similar mixed with phthalo green, or a standard warm yellow mixed with a phthalo green. There's nothing special about it, whereas their earth colours are special because some of them are unique. The next one that I'm going to mention is Pozzuoli Earth, which is a red iron oxide. And Pigment Red 101, single pigment. That's again a common reddish pigment. It's one of the classic red-brown pigments of watercolour, and I just sort of love the idea of having that in here. I've got to say, getting them into this palette is really hard, but that is just because they're full pans, not half pans, and it's not designed for it. There we go. And two more left. One is a classic one, you have to have, burnt sienna, which again is an iron oxide, but it's PBR7, it's brown iron oxide, and you can see when they're next to each other that there is rather a difference between them. That's in. And the last colour is Cinabrezze, which is classically a mixture of Sinopia, which is another name for Venetian red, made of hematite, usually mixed with a white to give a flesh tint. That's the purpose of it. So those flesh tints that you often get in watercolour sets that look awful, you're meant to take those and mix them with burnt umber, and that gives you a range of flesh colours, and this is kind of the same idea. The difference is this one's not actually composed in the same way. This one's actually a zinc oxide white, PW5, which is fine. Then it's pigment yellow 43, which is natural yellow iron oxide, and pigment red 83, which is alizarin crimson. So it's kind of a faux Cinabrezzi. In a way, it should have been a Venetian red, a pigment red 101, like Pozzuoli Earth, mixed with a white to give you a pink. If they were being really strict about what a Cinabrezzi should be, to my mind, because I think, you know, you shouldn't call phthalo blue ultramarine, it's just silly. So you shouldn't be calling other things by incorrect names. So there's my set of 11. I don't know why I bought 11, I don't know. I wanted enough to get a real feel for what they were like. Colours, and I just now need to stick on my swatches. What I found with these is, because they're just on aluminium foil, kitchen foil, sometimes you can peel paper off really easily, and sometimes you can't, so I've just been ripping around it and gluing them on. But they have got hand-painted swatches on the labels, which I really like. I love any company that does a hand-painted swatch. That is a guaranteed way to make me think your paints are better than they really are. And so I'm using Tombow XS, which I will link to in the iCards, because quite a few people have asked about it, because it looks like a really good, strong glue stick. And it's the only glue stick I've ever found that actually works, because they are so variable and often so crap. And it will stick foil to paper. I use it for card making principally, but I will link to it because a few people have asked. It's made by Tombow, which, you know, we know are a good company. They make sort of infamous Tombow markers, which are sort of every card maker has got, every stamper has got. I've got so I'm quite enjoying the colours, the tones. These are really very vivid. They're not muddy. They look good already. Not sure how well they're going to mix. Not sure how much I'm going to enjoy painting with them. And I'm also not sure whether those three that I swatched out, because I couldn't really wait. I'm really shit at delayed gratification of all kinds. And I really just wanted to see them. So they lifted so beautifully and so easily from the pans. And that is a feature that they really advertise. I'm not sure how much of that is finely ground paint with a good binder, or how much of it is because they put loads and loads of Oxgall and detergents in it to make them lift. So we'll see how much they move and run and everything else. Last one, Pozzuoli Earth. I will also mention that I'm swatching on Aquafine paper from Daler & Rowney. It's really cheap. It's a really economical hot press, and they now sell it in jumbo packs, so you can get a pad of 50 sheets for not much more than you pay for 12 sheets normally. Again, linked in the video description if you want to use it. I think swatching on hot press is a really good idea. A, because when you can cut hot press and put it in the palette, but B, things look worse on hot press than they do on cold press or rough. I can't really show you an example of that where I've done it recently, but I swatched some colours here. You can see some Daniel Smith paints on a rough textured paper, and they look amazing, and on hot press they don't look quite so good. So I think if you swatch on hot press, it will give you kind of like the minimum that paint can do, and then obviously when you move to cold press or rough in use, you will see a difference. So I will turn these around because I realised I'm very near the bottom. So I'm going to kind of be working upside down in a way. Get my Pro marker ready and do my black squares, because we need to know how opaque these are. I'm going to get totally confused now myself, because I'm not very good at when I work upside down, remembering that I'm going right to left instead of left to right. So I probably will put something in the wrong place, but we'll have a look. We'll persevere. So first colour is going to be Ultramarine Pink, which is the one that they had to resend because of problems. But yeah, I'm not going to hold that against them. So I've got some water here, and I'm going to be doing Ultramarine Pink here, and I'm just going to do across, back. I'm going to do it across and back because I haven't pre-wetted these. Yeah, I found with some of them, the more granular looking ones, that you do need a little bit more water. So you have to go across and back a few times to get them to really lift. But these ones lifted really easily. This one's a much more earthy looking pan, and they seem to need a little bit more effort. But it's a lovely colour. It's a really, really nice granulating tone, very similar to Ultramarine Violet in many other brands. But it is Ultramarine Pink. Now I'm doing Ultramarine Red. Now there is an Ultramarine Red that is actually red or reddish, but this is actually Ultramarine Violet. They just call it Ultramarine Red. And again, beautiful granulating, vivid colour. I'm not doing my sort of standard swatch with these because I want to try and get as much colour out as I can, really. What I have noticed is the pans don't wear down very quickly. See, these are going to last. What I'll do is over on my blog post that accompanies this video, which is linked in the video description, I will detail the pigments and how much these were and everything, so they're out there. Bohemian Green Earth isn't wetting very easily, so I might need to come back to it after it's had a bit of a soak. Yeah. I'm comparing them to the intensity they've got on their swatches, so I think these need a little bit more effort. Yeah, this needs a little bit more effort. Some paints just do need a bit more than others. It's a lovely colour, and this is a natural single pigment as well, so it's really nice to have that. And what I'll do is I'll let these just go off to one side and dry, and I'll bring them up to the camera and we'll look at them when I've done all of them. So now we're on to the Verona Green Earth, which is phthalo blue and brown iron oxide. So not surprisingly, it lifts really easily. It's not a natural green earth. It's not a natural earth green. So I think the name's a bit naughty. Calling it Verona Green Earth implies it's from Verona, and it's not. Maybe the brown iron oxide is from Verona, but then I would be a bit more truthful in the name. I think that's a little bit annoying. Permanent Green Very Light. This is the one that was a bit crystalline. That's lifting reasonably easily. So this is Hansa Yellow, remember, and a bit of Phthalo Green. Beautiful acid green. Would probably be good in mixes for grasses and that sort of thing. Very transparent, very pretty. Pozzuoli Earth. Very nice, very red earth here. This is a sort of, yeah, this is a Venetian red to me. Got a nice granulation to it and a fair bit of opacity. Now burnt sienna should be more brown than that, and it is, and again a nice granulation. So I want to know how well this will mix with the ultramarine and give me a Jane's Grey. We'll have a look at that. I've had a little bit of seepage there. I've got some of that yellow creeping across, but I don't mind. And Ginebrezzi last of all. Flesh Tint for those who want to just use a simpler name. Yeah, that's a very, very typical Flesh Tint. So I don't have some burnt umber to hand, unfortunately, otherwise I would mix them and see what range of flesh colours we could get. I've got a feeling that's going to granulate because it's a zinc oxide. It probably will. So I'll pop that to one side again, and then what I'm going to do is on this final sheet of paper, because this is the last sheet in this block, I am going to try doing some mixes just to see. So while they dry down, I'm going to do an ultramarine, so you can see how easy that ultramarine lifts and how transparent it is. I wonder if we can zoom on that. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to take some of the burnt sienna which isn't a very red burnt sienna, and mix the two, see what sort of grey we're going to get. So that's how I normally do it to find out. I mix them side by side and then in the middle, because what you then get is you get the kind of neutral, then you get the cooler version and the warmer version. So it's actually a really pretty granulating Jane's Grey. Let's mix them in a bit more and try and get it a bit more even. That is a really nice neutral. You could easily warm or cool that, but it's got a lovely granulation. Let's see what happens if we do the same thing. If you can see this mix. I'll move the paper just so you can see what I'm doing here. But I'm doing the same thing with the Pozzuoli Earth just to see, with that being much more red, how will it cope? Can we make a better neutral by using a more red, more orange brown? Yeah, it's a nice lavendery kind of neutral there, but again, it's going to granulate. Another one that I quite like is a purple yellow neutral. So let's try a, this is an ultramarine red that I'm using here. And I'm going to mix that with some cad yellow and some fly shit. And cad yellow is so intense, it's going to completely overpower this, so I'll put out a lot more. Now this is a neutral that can go wrong because it can end up looking very brown as this one is, and if that happens, you throw in more purple. And that's quite pretty actually, because again, granulating like crazy. Just zoom you out, and I'll just try over here doing a little triad. So some cad yellow. And look at how much paint you get with, and this is a squirrel mop I'm using, a really soft brush. And some cad red. I think the cad red's a little bit weaker than the other two of the primaries I've got. And an ultramarine, and then we should get, so I'm mixing a warm yellow and a warm blue here, so we should get a muddy green, an earthy green, which we do. We should get a delightful warm orange, which we do. I'm going to add a tiny bit more red to it, and a tiny bit more yellow. Yeah, really nice warm orange there. And then by mixing an ultramarine with a cad red, we should get a nice warm winey purple, and indeed we do. Now it's a little bit brown, very slightly brown, possibly because that cad red's got a little bit of a yellow tone to it, possibly a little bit warm, a little bit too warm. Let's try a bit more. But you can get a kind of a nice grey actually, a greyish purple by mixing them. It's quite nice. I quite like the mixes there, are really pretty, and again I'll bring them up to the camera so that you can have a look. There's some fantastic granulation going on. Let's try a red and a green neutral. Bit of cad red there, and I'll use the natural green earth, the Bohemian, which I think is going to be too weak. I might need to use the other one. No, I'm going to have to use the other one, to use the not so natural one. Quite a nice brown there. Can I get a true black neutral? No. Can't get a chromatic neutral because the colours are too far apart, unfortunately. I don't know if I put some... This is that synthetic green. No, just get an orange. So let's have a look at these all closer up. Let's look at the swatches first of all. So we'll look at them. 3 you've seen. Let's have a look at the ultramarine pink. Is a really gorgeous, similar to almost a cobalt violet, but granulating. Ultramarine red, again, just gorgeous granulation there. Whereas if you look at the blue, is really intense. This is much more subtle, but it's very pretty. Bohemian Green Earth is a gorgeous, much better than a Terra Velta from a tube. It's a really beautiful colour, and it is a natural green earth from Bohemia. Next up is the Verona Green Earth, which of course is a mixture of iron oxide and phthalo green, but it's very pretty nonetheless and slightly granulating. Permanent Green Very Light is a very acid yellow kind of green. It shows up better in real life than it does on the camera, but it's a really nice, almost highlighter kind of colour. Pozzuoli Earth is a really nice granulating. You can see this fantastic granulation. Almost a pinkish brown, whereas the Burnt Sienna is darker and actually more reddish, but again the camera's not picking that up terribly well. And then the Cinabrezze is indeed a flesh tint, as it should be. You can't really see it. This is actually, in real life, this is the same colour as my skin. It's a very fleshy colour, but it looks on the page almost like the colour of coffee or something. It's very dark, but it's not in real life. So my overall sort of first impression of these, and remember this is the first impression review, and I will do a more detailed, deep one with some proper mixing anon in my part 2, is that these are really good value, first of all, but a very high quality, very beautiful artist's watercolour. And if you look at them, they are absolutely great amounts of paint. Many of these are under £10 per full pan. You'd be paying the same price for a half pan in a lot of other brands. And even though we don't know what the kind of undersides of these looks like, and we've seen with one of them that it's kind of folded over, so it's not quite the value it appears, you're still getting way more paint than you get in a tube or a half pan, easily. They are absolutely beautiful, and I think out of curiosity alone, a lot of people are going to want to try these. But I would certainly say that if you want an en plein air set that's going to last you, these would be really suitable. If you want a studio set of really good quality, really intense colours, these would really suit you. And if you're really into earth colours and greens and interesting colours, these could be very good for you, because you can buy, you know, whereas you can normally get Burnt Sienna and Venetian Red, you can get a whole range of browns in this series, many of which were collected by the artist and ground up. And if you see any of them got names like Oxford Mudstone and all sorts of names like that, they've actually gone out and collected those from around the UK and made paint with them, and they are fantastic. I think the downside to that is that if you bought a pan of that now and you wait a year and you buy another, they're going to probably look a bit different, because they're natural materials, so they will have variation. But I think these are excellent quality, excellent, really excellent value for a high quality artist paint. These are most certainly artist quality, most certainly professional paint. Not for the faint-hearted, because the colour intensity is great and they come off really easily on the brush, so they might not be quite for everybody. Let's have a look at those neutrals that we made. I can't remember which one was which, but a wonderful granulating grey here, granulating purple, which I think was the first one I might have made. That one I did with the yellow and the purple. Fantastic granulation there. You can quite really appreciate that, but it's really beautiful granulation going on there. I think that mix could be very useful. Again, not the prettiest colour, but a nice granulation. And then when I did the colour wheel, poor man's colour wheel, you've got granulation between the green and between the yellow and the red, so that orange is very granulating, very interesting. It's not a flat orange. You've got similar between the ultramarine and the red. You've got a very interesting grey purple, and then that beautiful, very useful granulating green, and it's a very earthy green. It would be very, very useful for landscapes. So I think these are a really useful set. I've got no qualms about them at all. I highly recommend these to anybody who wants a high quality artist pigment paint, who wants value for money and wants something a little bit different, a little bit that's not sort of the standard bog standard paints that absolutely everybody has got. People who perhaps want something that little bit different. So Minan, can't remember what they're called, palettes, really good value, perfect for storing these kinds of paint. You'll see those linked in the iCards. Thank you all very much. I look forward to seeing you in part 2 in a few weeks' time, and I've really had a chance to play with these. Good evening.